Oh, hey, how's it going? Good to see you again. I'm just kind of continuing to work on putting stuff away. Right here, what I'm doing is this is all my hardware. This is my collection of 632 components, meaning, well, let's see here. I can see a lot of lock washers. I can see washers. I can see different lengths of bolts. Some nuts for both nylon nuts and also just regular nuts for 632. The thing is I got two boxes of these and they have a lot of the same things in them. And the problem is I don't have enough room to take this box and put everything from this box into this box. So I'm going to the bigger boxes just to get everything put into one place, and then additionally I'll have more room to add to it from there. Yeah, I know, it's pretty fascinating stuff. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to end up just kind of taking and working drawer by drawer to try to figure out which ones need to have all the stuff dumped out of them and reset somehow, or maybe just thrown away, because I've got a lot of drawers that are just like that. They've just got so much stuff in them that over the years I've just never thrown it away, and now I've come back to it. It's like, why in the heck can't I find anything? Because it's buried in all this stuff I don't need. So that's what I'm doing today, but what? Oh. Yeah, I see. So you want to talk about the 800-pound gorilla in the room, don't you? Okay, well, yeah, this plane has been quite a learning experience. And I'll tell you what, I'll go ahead and share it with you. But let me clean this up here and I'll get right back with you. Hey, welcome back to the shop. It's really good to see you here again. Have you ever had a plane that you just didn't get along with? You know, it could be anything. It could be that it was a bad design. It could be that maybe your skills weren't quite up to the capability that you needed to have in order to fly the plane. Or, you know, maybe it's just plain old bad juju. I don't know. Bad juju happens as well. But sometimes planes just don't work out. And this has been kind of a disappointment for me. I was really excited to get this plane going, especially after losing that park zone F4U that I'd had for like 15 years, almost 15 years. Yeah. And well, I thought, how hard could it be to replace something so simple? And it turns out it's not that simple at all. So this is the plane that I got. The place I got it from, their name rhymes with Doggy Bones, or Doggy Bone, rather. And it's from a company named Arrows, which I had never heard of. The only experience I really had with foamies has been E-Flight and Park Zone. Those are the only two companies I've ever owned a foamy ARF type plane. And so I guess this is kind of a learning curve for me, but I thought, well, maybe they're all the same, you know, as far as that goes. But I found out that I kind of want to go back on that now, because I think that this one here there's other companies out there. There's another one called FMS, and I've got some friends that have planes from that company and they like them. There's just other companies that they're all coming from China. I know that that's where most of the manufacturing is happening as far as our hobby goes nowadays. And so anyways, this one here, I thought, no problem. It'll be a piece of cake. I'll be able to use the same batteries. The footprint is roughly the same. The wingspan, the length, all that stuff is roughly the same. But what I have found out is this plane is just not ready to fly out of the box. You got to put it together. That's true. But there's a lot of other things that are wrong with it. One of the things that is quite different on this plane is the foam is a lot more dense than it was on that Park Zone flyer. So that plane was obviously a lot lighter. It was more of that open cell. This stuff here is a lot stronger, and I think as a result makes it a lot heavier. And so weight is probably the biggest problem with this new airplane. There's a couple other ones. I'll go over them one by one here, but the weight of the airplane is heavier. And that means that it's got, it's despite the fact that I bought this plane because I wouldn't need to buy a whole new set of batteries, because everybody they said, oh, this does 3 cells. And that's what it was recommended from the manufacturer, 3-cell battery. So you put the 3-cell battery into it and get it all ready to go. And then it says on the instructions that it needs to be balanced at, the CG needs to be at 60 millimeters. And I don't know if you can see this on the wing, but here's what I did. Okay, so you see there's a couple different marks here. The first mark down on the bottom is silver. That's that silverish kind of highlighter. That's at 60 millimeters back from the leading edge like the instructions call for. So that's where I initially balanced the airplane. In order to get that, I had to add about 1.5 ounces of lead up into the front. And then it balanced on there perfectly. I got the battery shoved as far forward as I could within the setup it's got. And put it all together. And the first flight was awful. It was terribly tail heavy. I mean, you didn't even, it started lifting off the ground before it even had enough speed. And you didn't have to even touch the elevator. All you had to do is think elevator, and it was shooting to vertical. So it was terribly sensitive to everything on there. And it was just a bad setup, a bad, totally bad CG. I rodeoed it around the pattern as long as I could and decided, okay, let's go ahead and try to settle down and bring this thing in. And it came in, and of course, as any plane that is tail heavy with oversensitive throws on everything because of the tail heaviness, I kind of poked it on its front gear. Actually, it wasn't too terribly bad, but the front gear collapsed. And that is how we get this. The front gear, the gear that they put in here, and I thought it'd be really cool to have the new version of the Corsair having retractable gear. Just, oh my gosh, that's so cool. It also has flaps on it. And it's got, you know, some upgrades that the original Park Zone one that I had didn't have. And I thought, oh, this will be really cool. Well, it turns out that these gear, I'll show you what they look like. Here's one of them. Actually, that one is, I'll show you the one that got damaged. It came in and the gear just collapsed underneath it. Now, I since have tried to make this work by making it a fixed gear because the retraction method in it broke. I don't know if you can see that, but there is a hairline fracture that is caused by the torque of just a slight amount of weight. This plastic retract is so thin-walled that it just split right up the side of there. And it just became unusable at that point. I tried taking it apart, gluing the halves back together with super glue. Didn't work. It just has so much torque in it that it could just pop it right back apart again. And so this gear would never retract ever again. So I thought, great, one flight, wrecked the gear, and it's beyond use. I tried to go ahead and set it as fixed, and still not quite the same because the retract strut in it is so weak. It is not like music wire or anything that is meant to resist any kind of force hitting it. It is, I think, probably just like a 440 rod, and it is super easy to bend. So if you have anything other than a perfect landing on this gear, you're probably going to bend it or bust the housing on the case for the retract on here. So I was very disappointed. That was one flight and busted it up pretty bad. So the next thing we do is sent off for a new set of gear. So $37 and I'm back in a new set of gear. And I started thinking about that CG, and I had a friend who had another one of these planes, but it wasn't the same brand as this. And I asked him, I said, where do you have the CG on yours? And he said on his, it was at 55 millimeters. Okay, so then I marked in the second one right here. This is 55 millimeters. I'm going to show you now how I was adding more weight to the front end to get them to land in those new areas. So you have to add more weight to the front because of that. Let's back up a minute. Why is the back end so heavy on this airplane? I'll tell you exactly what it is. Look at this. You see this back here? Take a look at the back end. Anything you are putting rear of the wing is critical for weight. On this back end, they've got a bunch of froofy, non-functional crap that doesn't need to be back here that is adding weight. So the first thing you have is this. See these rods? These are metal rods. They're full length. These are heavy. The ones, I didn't even really notice it until I got to looking back at that park zone I had, and it had a very super thin music wire that didn't really give it much strength, so they strengthened it by putting a carbon fiber wrapper around the outside of it, and it stiffened that rod up, and it also made it very light all the way back. This has got 2 steel rods just for the elevator. So you've got double the weight coming to the back here. Then you got this. You got these doors. I mean, they're only made of foam, but it's still, on a plane of this size, that's putting a lot of weight into the back of it. It doesn't take much weight to make this tail heavy. And then you have to add a ton more weight up in the front because the nose is very short. It's not a long nose on the front there, so you really have to try to get the weight as far forward as you possibly can. So this has got this doors. It's got the double rods going back to the elevators. It's got a fake tail hook. I don't know. You know, I suppose it looks cool and everything, but these are all things that add weight to an area you don't want to add any weight. And so that's a problem. So in order to counter that and move that up to here, let me show you what I did as far as adding weight to the front end of this plane. Boom, I'm back. Yeah, so what I did was I took the propeller off there, but I wanted to pop this off and show you what I did. So if you look up in the front end here, you can see, I'm gonna come around there so I can point them all out to you. All the different pieces of weight that I put up in the front. These are mag wheel weights that are all backed with this foamy sticky. Okay, so this is 1/2 ounce, and this is 1/2 ounce on the top, and 1/2 ounce underneath it. So that's 1.5 ounces. Then this is another 1/2 ounce here, so that's 2 ounces. And then these two stacked on top of each other here, that's 3 ounces. That's 3 ounces of lead, what I added to the front here. And then I think there's even more on the inside. Let me check. I thought I put some in the inside too. No, I did not. Okay, so that's what I had to put in there. And that wasn't just to get it to, when he told me 55 ounces was what his was, that's what this mark is here. What I flew that one too, and it was also still very tail heavy. It wasn't as bad as it was, but it was still too tail heavy to be flyable. And so the final thing was I moved it up and I just put a dimple here. That is 50 millimeters. So here's what the instructions said. 50 millimeters is up here, and 50 actually flew pretty well. It flew to a point where it was nice and controllable, and it was kind of a pleasure to fly. There was still some other things that were happening because this plane was starting to run kind of heavy. One of them is it gets a lot of torque in it because of this. It's got this big old 4-blade prop, which, you know, I don't know what the purpose of a 4-blade prop. Most of the F4Us, if you're going for scaleness, had a 3-blade prop. In fact, I think the only one that had a 4-blade prop was the F4U-5 version. I think it was the 5 version. And it had a supercharged engine on it. It looked different than this particular. This one looks like a F4U-1A type plane. But the F4U-5 had like a supercharged engine on it and a bunch of other things. The opening airlets and stuff like that. If you're into scale, it never had a 4-blade prop on this style of airplane. But this gives a lot of torque to it. So when I'm going down the runway, I'm picking up speed, And this thing is torquing hard over to the left. There's no thrust in that engine. So, and that's fine. I don't have anything against driving a plane, but this one provides so much torque in it, I was having to give the rudder almost its full throw just to keep it tracking straight down the runway. And then once you started to lift, as soon as it got off the ground and was lifting and flying on the wings, suddenly the back end with the yaw rate, because the rudder was turned over so far, started kicking around. And it made it so it made a pretty ugly takeoff is what would happen. It would lift up and then start shooting over the side, so you'd let go and it would snap back, and it was just weird. It was way too much. It's got way too much torque in it. Not sure what the answer to that would be. Maybe to have a two-blade prop put on it. Maybe that's something that can be done. Or the other thing would be to just not advance the throttle as fast, take off super slow, take off super long, and maybe that would make it so that it could overcome the torque with the standard flying rudder toward the end of the runway. I don't know. It just sucked. I didn't like it. But anyways, so that's pretty much what happened. Second set of gear, or once I got this thing finally to the point where I wasn't breaking the gear every time, it was up in the air, it was fine, but the battery, it calls for a 3-cell, but it just burns through it super fast. And so you're getting about 3-4 minutes of flight, when with the park zone, I was used to getting like 7.5, 8 minutes of flight time. This one gave me about 4. I wasn't expecting it to, and all of a sudden, it was just falling out of the air, and it was terrible, and I couldn't get it back to the runway. And when it went in, I put it off in the dirt, and I busted the second set of gear. And at that point, I thought, you know what? This is enough. This is just crazy. And, you know, to have the gear be the thing that's going to get me out of the air constantly, I'm not going to order another set of gear from this thing. It's just ridiculous. So right now, I'm pretty disappointed in this plane. I'm not happy with it. The manufacturer, I think that it's just too heavy for what it needs to be. So I'm going to make some changes to it. I mean, I'm going to try to lighten up the back end as much as I can so I can start getting the lead out of the front of it. And I think I'm going to put a set of music wire standard fixed gear on it, because I just don't see a reason or a way that, you know, you can put gear into something this small that needs to be as tough as a foamy needs to be. I mean, a small plane like this, they don't fly well, and it's hard to really get a butter smooth landing with them. They're very susceptible to any little breeze or wind, you know, so anytime that you're not landing perfectly, greasing it, you know, just greasing it in perfectly, maybe in a 3-point stance, I think it's just going to give you problems. And I can't imagine like flying this off of grass or anything other than a really smooth runway, because I think you're just setting yourself up for wanting to keep buying gear for this thing, because these landing gear, I've appropriately marked the box on here. They're just junk. They look nice and everything, but the struts, I mean, it's bad enough that the retract is weak, but the struts are also made of a non-music wire. It's not tough. So anytime you come in for a little bit of a hard land, it bends them back. And when they bend back and you go to put them into the plane, oh look, some of the weight fell out. You get this going on. Once they get bent, they don't go back into their wheel well right anymore. So that's a problem you end up chasing too. I don't know. It's just got additional weight. It's got a set of flaps on it too, so it's got 2 more servos in it than the Park Zone had. Yeah. So I don't know. Just been disappointing. If you were to try and go buy one of these yourself, you know, I'm not going to recommend it, because this is just ridiculous. It's like, unless you are willing to completely go through it and fix it up, I think it's just going to be a heartbreaker for you, because it's a beautiful looking plane. I mean, they've got the panel lines on it. They got the markings on it. It looks really nice. And I don't know. It's just, I think it's just a poor design, and it needs some work. And so I'm going to put this one on the back burner. I'm not going to throw it away. But I am going to go through it and see what I can do. Like I said, I'm going to fix those gears. That little park flyer I had for so many years always had the fixed gear, and you know what? It's cool. It flew great, and that's what I really enjoyed about it. Having the trick of having your landing gear go up and stuff is cool and everything, but until they're making these things strong enough to actually fit the job, I don't know what the point is. I really don't. So I guess if I had some advice about this, be careful about what brand you're buying. I looked at several videos on YouTube about this plane, and if you look, there's not much depth. So in other words, there is a review where somebody gets it, puts it together, takes it out and flies it, talks about how great it is, and then you don't see any more videos about it after that. And I think it's kind of like it's on a timer. As soon as you get it and you're flying it, you got a certain number of landings before these things are going to fall apart on you. And there's another one that comes from E-flite, and it's a little bit bigger than this, and they have retracts in it too. I don't know if they have flaps on it though, but this one has flaps and lights, and it's a lot of fun. But I think the E-flite one, if you look at the comments in it, you're going to find that a lot of the people talk about how the retracts are the big weakness on it. And maybe it's just something that, you know, retracts aren't really necessary on foamies. Because you think, oh, it's a lightweight airplane, how hard could it be? But they just don't have the finesse that, you know, they, first of all, they've got these little wheels. Little wheels give you a lot of friction problems on your gear. They put a lot of drag on those gear when they land. So, I don't know. I wouldn't recommend getting this plane. I don't know if I'd even recommend getting the E-flite version simply because of the retract issue. Play that one like you want to, but I just I am not enamored with this setup here. And they've got other things. People have said, well, you know, you don't have to put all that weight up front, just put a 4-cell battery up in the front and use that instead of a 3-cell. I didn't have any 4-cell batteries for one thing, but the second thing is the 4-cell battery, the ESC that comes with it is not made for 4-cell. It's made for a 3-cell. So you can run it for a while, but eventually it's going to burn it up. So that's not sustainable as far as I'm concerned. But anyways, you know, foamies, they are what they are. I did find something else instead to fit my foamy need. Let me show you what it is. And here it is. Poof. So this is the E-flite SR22, and it is a fun plane to fly. It is a fixed gear, no retracts, yeah, I know. It's a fixed gear, and it flew exactly how you would expect it to out of the box. Another great E-flite product. It even had a note in there that said, hey, it's funny, the suggested CG on this one is 60 millimeters back from the leading edge. It's like, oh great, another 60. There was an addendum inside the kit that was right in the top of the box, so that when you open it, it was the first thing you saw. It says, please set your CG at 55. The manual was incorrectly spoken, saying 60 millimeters, so 55. And I thought that was really cool. Actually, it was between 53 and 55, I think is what it amounted to. So anyways, this is what I've gone to. I just, you know, I've always liked having the Corsair, because the Corsair that's my favorite airplane, top to bottom. That's my favorite airplane. But, you know, sometimes having a great foamy airplane just for going out, for the days when you don't feel like charging a battery, when you don't feel like, you know, doing all the things you got to do to prep your other plane to go, and all you have to do is, well, you got to charge a battery. Okay, yeah. But, I mean, you don't have to charge the onboard batteries for the receiver and all that kind of stuff. It's so much easier just to throw this in the back of the car and go out to the field and fly it. And that's kind of the purpose I was looking for. So I asked a friend, you know, what's a great plane that you would fly? And he suggested this one because it was the real deal. It's a fun plane to fly. It's easy to fly. It's got a lot of capability, very acrobatic, all that kind of fun stuff. And it looks really good flying through the air. And, you know, I've never really been totally serious about civilian airplanes. About the most civilian as I've ever been is having that decathlon. That's about as close to having a civilian airplane. Most of mine are military or old era racing era from the 30s and stuff like that. Those are my kind of planes. So this was really nice, and it was very refreshing. And it said right up front, you're going to need 4-cell batteries. So I went ahead and bought a couple of them. Gonna try to figure out something to do with all those 3-cell batteries I've got. I think I've got like 4 or 5 of them. Oh well, what can you say? But this is going to be what I'll be flying now when I just want to get out to the field and in a hurry. And this is it. So that's my story. I'm sticking with it. I guess I'll catch you next time. We're going to be talking about the Beaver next. We're going to be starting on building it, and it's quite a kit. You're going to dig this. So I'll have that one on the next video. Until then, get building or flying something. Yeah, we'll get building. We got to start building again. I'm going to stop working on the shop too. I'll see you guys later. Thanks.